Testing, testing.
We can hear you, Councillor Hazelton.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment meeting for November the 8th. I would like to call this meeting to order at 10 a.m. sharp. Before we begin, I'd like to read the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that we are working on lands traditionally occupied by the Indigenous peoples. Indigenous people continue to care for this land and continue to shape our township. We show our respect and will continually honor the treaties that were signed as we consider our decisions and actions. I would ask members of the committee, do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. You would have had the opportunity to review the minutes of our previous meeting. And I have a motion moved by Member Hazelton, seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment approves minutes of October 11, 2024 as circulated. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. This morning there's a public meeting scheduled for 5 minor variance applications. If you are present and wish to be notified of the decisions of the applications on the agenda this morning, please add your contact information to the sign-in sheet that you'll see in front. And of course, if you are online, we will have your email address and you can request notification as well. I'll briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized. Briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for today's meeting. First, the Secretary-Treasurer will advise the committee as to when, how, and to whom notice of each of the hearings was circulated for the applications being considered. Next, each of the applications will be considered separately. Planning staff will advise as the purpose and effect of the applications and provide any information that is relevant. The Secretary-Treasurer will summarize any correspondence on file, and from there the applicant may make a brief presentation if they so choose, and the public will have an opportunity to speak to the applications being considered. After the public forum, the committee will then deliberate on the proposed applications and consider a motion to pass, defeat, or defer the decision of the application. The minor variance applications being considered this morning are A24-37 for 34 Heron Point Road, A24-43 for 219 Big Rock Road, A24-49 for 142 Carson Way, A24-50 for 2 Island 2660 Georgian Bay, and A24-48 for 310 Birch Acres Drive. I ask the Secretary-Treasurer to provide information on notifications.
Thank you. Notice of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, 500 meters, or 800 meters, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may have also been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act 1990.
Thank you very much. Our first application this morning is A24-37 for 34 Heron Point Road. To the planner, please.
Thank you, and through the chair, if I could just have permission to share my screen. The following presentation is for a public meeting regarding minor variance application A2437 for the lands municipally known as 34 Heron Point Road in the Township of Georgian Bay, District Municipality of Muskoka. Subject property is situated with frontage onto 6 Mile Lake with private road access via Heron Point Road. The lands are characterized by exposed granite rock varying in elevation throughout, with vegetation being present to the interior sides of the property. The lands have an approximate area of 2,858 square meters with a frontage of 53.4 meters. Currently, there is a dryland boathouse and detached garage located on the property. In order to recognize the existing non-compliant dryland boathouse, variances were required to address section 4.17 and 4.1.12.4 of the zoning bylaw. As the dryland boathouse has a ground floor area of only 11.16 square meters, a building permit was not required and further was never provided zoning review or approval. In order to develop the property with a detached dwelling as proposed, variances are required to address section 4.11, section 6.3, and section 6.4 of the zoning bylaw. The majority of the variances were regarding the dwelling are required due to the legal non-complying status of the previously existing dwelling being sited 9.9 meters from the water's edge, whereas a 20-meter setback is now required as per zoning bylaw 2014-75. It should be noted that section 4.11 applies based on the size of the previously existing legal non-complying dwelling. Although the width and gross floor area of the complete developed area, being the dwelling and sleeping cabin attached via deck, was similar to that of the proposed dwelling, the previously existing dwelling itself was only 36.5 square meters in gross floor area, making the permitted expansions limited. To be clear, two of the proposed variances as shown in the detached dwelling 6 Mile Lake policy section of the table are technical in nature, as they will result in the same outcome as the two 4.11 variances being requested regarding dwelling gross floor area and width. The proposed dwelling is to be constructed to fit within the unique natural outcrops present on the property. Overall, the orientation and placement of the dwelling is designed to avoid the requirement of rock blasting. The owner wishes to work with the existing landscape of the property to propose a dwelling to meet their family needs. The dwelling will be accessed by a door on the second story of the proposed dwelling, with the height of the dwelling being made equal to the height of the upper ledge of the rock outcrop. The owner has notified staff of the intention to blend the proposed dwelling in with a natural backdrop through the use of dark charcoal colored siding and natural wood accents. All existing vegetation present on the site, with the exception of one mature tree, is to be retained. The applicant has noted that the boathouse placement was due to an incorrect survey pin location at the time of construction. In the interest of cost, avoidance of vegetation degradation, and view from the water, the applicant has applied to vary the side yard setback instead of moving the boathouse to meet the 5-meter side yard setback requirement. The central purpose of roof pitch is to redirect wind and precipitation. When applied to boathouses, the regulation of roof pitch relates to water quality. Solar heating of pooling or slow-moving water runoff from boathouses can directly affect the temperature of water bodies. The dryland boathouse in question is set back 10.17 meters from the water's edge, and therefore staff have no concern regarding roof pitch in relation to water temperature. As shown on the site plan provided, the previously existing dwelling and sleeping cabin attached via deck were located in the same natural rock ledge as proposed dwelling. Shown in red is the location of the previously existing dwelling and sleeping cabin that were attached by the large open deck. Considering the complete width of the developed area within this location, the proposed dwelling will only be increasing the width by 3.43 meters. Shown in green is the location of the proposed dwelling. As you can see, the majority of the dwelling is to be set back further than the previous development, while the closest point to the north extent of the development will meet the existing legal non-compliant setback of 9.9 meters. And as shown in blue is the location of the existing dryland boathouse. Besides the interior yard setback and roof pitch, the boathouse complies with all other requirements of the zoning bylaw. Shown here are the site photos displaying the previously existing development. As you can see, the previous decking nearly overhung the granite rock edge and connected the dwelling and sleeping cabin to form an overall footprint similar to that of the proposed dwelling. Further, the image on the top left of the screen provides an insight to the physical characteristics of the shoreline, noting that the front lot of the subject property is recessed further than that of the directly neighboring lands. Shown here are site photos taken in August of 2024. The area of the proposed development is now cleared. The official plan policies regarding 6 Mile Lake are centered around the maintenance of the local character and having respect to aesthetic quality of the community. Although grouped together under the umbrella of the 6 Mile Lake Inland Waterfront Community, the lake itself contains several distinct areas in terms of development intensity. The majority of the development within Crooked Bay, in particular, is developed similar to what is being proposed. For example, directly neighboring properties contain dwellings having exposure to the shoreline with gross floor areas of 205 square meters or more. The committee can either approve or deny any of the variances being requested. The committee may also defer the application to a later date if additional information is required to come to a decision. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variance to the zoning bylaw being requested and are recommending approval subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see on our registration sheet we have the agent and the owner present. Is there anything that you wish to add to the planner's comments? If so, please come forward. Turn on the microphone, identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Victoria Hoffman. I'm here on behalf of Flow Drawings and Design, 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. Andrew, can you, if possible, pull back up the survey? Yeah. I was going to walk you guys through kind of where the cabin, the cottage, and the deck was. I like the way you highlighted those, so that's going to make this easier for me. My main point here being was that the existing 2 structures, one was legally deemed, the one to the north was legally deemed the cottage, the other one being the sleeping cabin. The reason I'm bringing it up is that the cottage didn't even have sleeping spaces in it. Like it was literally just an open living space. The deck was kind of used as the adjoining connection, and then the other structure was the bedrooms. For legalities, they got designated differently, but those 2 structures, as well as the deck, were used as the cottage. The cabin also sits taller than the cottage does. So when we're looking at our 411, all of our numbers got pulled from the cottage structure, which was kind of smaller to the rock and all that. The total structure from the edge of the cottage to the edge of the cabin, it was also 18.35 meters wide versus the much narrower cottage alone, and we're asking for 18.78. So when you're looking at the width of the whole thing, it's really quite similar. The other key point I want to mention here is the 9.9 meter setback was taken to the cottage of the original structure, the structure to the north, whereas now even the lower floor is quite a bit further back than the cabin, and then we've tipped it even farther on the second floor. The other thing to take into mind that the roof is on the second story, which again is pivoted even further away from the water. So from a height perspective, when you're looking from the water. And then also, I don't know if you guys did site visits, but there's an obvious rock ridge there that we were trying to incorporate into our design, and blasting wasn't really an option. And if we were to put it on that ridge, it would have been obnoxiously tall. So that's kind of what we were working. It's honestly a shallower lot than a lot, and with the existing garage and then as well as the septic, it was kind of limited in stuff and options. The owner is here as well, and I'm here to answer any questions, but that was kind of my quick summary.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure there will be questions, Victoria, so hang in there. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the committee or make comment on this application? Okay, seeing none, I will bring close the public session, bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Victoria, could you just explain again about the height of the existing cabins? Because when I was there, they were demolished, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just a little confused whether the new building's going to be taller or.
So the new building will be taller. Those cabins were single-story structures.
Right.
I don't know what the slope was, but it was a lower slope. We should have photos. So it will be taller, because the other one we're kind of pushing over and trying to get out to that rock ridge height type deal.
But we're still within allowable height?
So we're applying for a height minor variance through 411 because of our expansion, but we're within the SR6.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just on that, Victoria, the evolution of that. So when you went there initially, the cabin, the old cabin and the sleeping bunkie were there.
Correct.
And so were you able to get a demolition permit to remove those before you?
So a demolition permit was taken out for the sleeping cabin to legitimize the garage to make way because the cabin had to move from where it was into the garage. So a demo permit was taken out for that. And then the cottage ended up coming down at the same time. So that was a little bit, they were all tied together and they were in such bad shape that they kind of just came down.
It's just the chronological chain of events there. Usually you don't get a demolition permit until a building permit is done, and then you don't get a building permit for an accessory building until the primary building is up. So everything seems to be going the
Correct.
reverse order. But
Yes, I understand that. Yeah, and I think that's some of the some of the urgency to get a dwelling back on this property.
It is what it is.
I can't speak to that exactly how that unfolded. We did get a cabin demo permit though, and I do know that the structures were very tied together. So I think when it was coming down, they just ended up coming down together.
All right. Also, I would ask the Secretary Treasurer if we've had any correspondence on this application.
Yes, we have 6 letters of support received from Andy O'Brien, Francesco Bertola, Ian Cruikshank, Jasmine Braun, Mark and Alexander Ginty, and Vince Hosick. And 1 letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating a building permit is required for the detached dwelling and dryland boathouse.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other members of the committee that had a question? Member Jarvis.
Just really quickly, is it anticipated that any trees will be coming down as a result of this new build?
I think there's one kind of along the rock ridge that's going to end up coming down just because of the way that we're tipping the second story. But for the most part, we're trying to land that second story like just nicely along that ridge so that they can kind of come in from the back at that height.
So one follow-up question. I just thought of this. It looks like the picture, obviously, after everything's been taken down, there's a lot of fill in there. Is that the base for the new build?
Yeah. Part of the orientation too is that he doesn't really have safe access around that ridge right now, which is why the existing had decks kind of coming around, cantilevered over the rock. And then they also kind of came, so by pivoting it back, he's going to be walking around that rock to kind of get to the front of his cottage and down to the water, because then he's got to go along the rock ridge and down to where that boathouse was. There was stairs originally actually over the property line. But when the neighbor, who was one of the people that submitted a letter of support, they built quite a large garage. And when they were doing that, they had to get the foundation pinned and all that. And that came to light that their lot line wasn't exactly where everybody thought it was. So that's all been rectified, but that's where we've left with the boathouse.
Just one other small question. And I noticed that the roof of the dryland boathouse is pretty flat. Is there an advantage to have flat rather than?
So it was done with TGIs because he wants to put a green roof on it. So it's so thick and it has to be at a low slope because of the green roof structure on top.
So you're going to put dirt and grass and stuff like that on there?
Because he doesn't want to look at like shingles or metal or whatever, right? Because he's up above it.
Of course, yeah. I was wondering why it was such an angle, but that makes sense. So,
which also helps with the water concern, right? Because it's the reason for the dryland boathouse rule is so that you don't warm up the water bodies. But ideally, with a green roof, not much water is going to be hitting the ground.
Well, I compliment you on that design. It must have been quite a challenge.
It was the owner's idea, but we pulled it together.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, to incorporate all that rock in there, it turned out.
It should be quite nice once it's done.
Okay, I see no more hands up online or in attendance. So if there are no more questions, then I will read the resolution. It's moved by Member Rivet, seconded by Member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A24-37 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended, for 34 Heron Point Road to facilitate the construction of a detached dwelling and bring a dryland boathouse into compliance, permitting the following. 1, a decrease in minimum side yard setback for a dryland boathouse to 2.2 meters, whereas section 4.1.7 requires a minimum setback of 5 meters. 2, a decrease in the dryland boathouse roof pitch to 0.22 over 12, whereas section 4.1.12.4 requires a minimum roof pitch of 312. 3, that an increase in dwelling gross floor area to 243.8 square meters, whereas section 411E allows for an increase to 95 square meters, and whereas section 6.4 allows for an increase of 190 square meters. Number 4, an increase in the dwelling width to 18.78 meters, whereas section 411E allows for an increase of 14.43 meters, and whereas section 6.4 allows for an increase of 13.35 meters. 5, an increase in the dwelling height to 6.87 meters, whereas section 411E allows for a dwelling height of 6 meters. And finally, 6, an increase in the maximum lot coverage to 9.62%, whereas section 6.3 allows for a maximum lot coverage of 8%. And the above approvals are subject to the following conditions. Firstly, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And 2, that the proposed detached dwelling and dryland boathouse is substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee, including that a dryland boathouse shall not include a rooftop patio. And 3, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you.
Our next application is minor variance A23-43 for 219 Big Rock Road. To the planner, please.
Thank you, and through the chair, the following presentation is for a public meeting regarding minor variance application A2443 for the lands municipally known as 219 Big Rock Road in the Township of Georgian Bay, District Municipality of Muskoka. The subject property is situated with frontage onto 6 Mile Lake with private road access via Big Rock Road. The lands are characterized by exposed granite rock throughout the shoreline area, areas of maintained grass at the midpoint of the property, with vegetation being present to the interior sides and rear of the property. The property has an area of 0.32 hectares or 3,197 square meters with a frontage of 70.5 meters. Currently, there is a detached dwelling, sleeping cabin, boat port, and dock located on the subject property. In order to develop the property with the sleeping cabin as proposed, variances are required to address section 4.1.14 and section 6.3 of the zoning bylaw. The purpose and intent of limiting the number of sleeping cabins and providing a maximum lot coverage value is to assist in prohibiting single lot overdevelopment. The central factor in considering lot overdevelopment is visual impact from roadways, waterways, and neighboring properties. The proposed sleeping cabin remains accessory to the principal building or use on the lot in terms of size and will have minimal visual impacts on both neighboring properties, the waterfront, and the streetscape. The proposed sleeping cabin will be constructed in a location on the property that is appropriately set back from all lot lines and the nearby septic system. As seen in the site photos displayed, the cabin will be located on a portion of the property that requires minimal vegetation disturbance and can be accessed and accommodated by the existing driveway. The justification behind the increase in number of sleeping cabins and increase in lot coverage is to accommodate the property owner's growing family needs. The proposed building is intended to provide family members comfortable accommodation in a location that is sited as far back from the waterfront as possible, given the unique lot boundaries and location of the existing septic system. The alternative of expanding the existing detached dwelling was not a viable option given the legal non-complying status of the dwelling and surrounding physical property constraints. As seen in these site photos, the dwelling is situated between a granite rock outcrop and is in close proximity to the interior side lot line. Any suitable expansion of the dwelling would require rock blasting. There's a significant elevation change that takes place between the shoreline and the proposed location of the sleeping cabin. And further, there is a vegetation buffer that exists between the subject lands and neighboring properties that will work to shield the sleeping cabin from view. The committee can either approve or deny the variances being requested. The committee may also defer the application to a later date if additional information is required to come to a decision. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variance to the zoning bylaw being requested and are recommending approval subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence on this application?
Following correspondence has been received. 2 letters of support were received from Grant and St. Gills and Robin Bolton, and 1 letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating that a building permit will be required and the septic will be reviewed to ensure sizing is large enough.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to add anything to the planner's comments? You're still Victoria Hoffman?
I'm still Victoria Hoffman from Flow Drawings, 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. So this one, when we started talking about development on this property to meet the family needs, we met and going over the existing cottage. Right away, there's obviously quite a bit of development along the shoreline, and the cottage is kind of low lying in those rocks. Expanding onto cottages like that is costly as well. So we were kind of looking into these things. Blasting, I'm not even sure if it would have been on the table because they weren't going to be replacing the cottage. So it was all too close. And that's kind of where we started looking at, okay, let's detach the structure then for a more cost-effective way to kind of get some expansion. If you stand on the dock, again, I don't know if everybody did site visits, but if you stand on the dock and you look up, there's a great tree buffer kind of behind the U-shaped dock, and then along the other side is the main structures. And because of the incline, I'm truly not convinced you're going to be able to see this bunkie, maybe from a little bit out on the bay, but there's still going to be pretty good buffer. I was there posting the signs a week or 2 ago, and even with the fall colors and all that, it was still pretty covered. But yeah, here to answer any questions. The property owner is also online if you have any questions for them.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any member of the public present or online that wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Schmidt.
Thanks very much for the presentation to the chair. Had the opportunity last weekend to go out and do a site visit of the property and certainly see the limitations that they have within that sort of building envelope down where the cottage is situated. And had the opportunity to speak with one of the closest neighbors, I would say to the south, and they certainly were very comfortable with the family's plans and think it's probably the path of least resistance to be able to get to where the family needs to be for accommodation. So outside of the box, but I think a good solution.
Member Jarvis.
I'm curious, in light of the fact that we've got one building, the cabin, the existing cabin right down on the water, was any consideration given, or was the planning discussed with you guys the possibility of removing that cabin and even expanding the size of the proposed cabin?
Yes, so we did look into that. We also looked into it when we were considering expanding the cottage because it would have been another setback issue. The current cabin right now exists of more of like a art studio craft area with the kids and stuff like that. It gives them that existing or current layover space, which they don't have in the cottage. The proposed cabin is maxing out the allowables for the cabin itself is compliant. If we were to have kind of converted that space in there, the cabin would have been too large. And they quite like that existing building, so that's why we're here.
I mean, they could have applied for a variance to have a larger cabin. I'm not keen on seeing the cabin still down on the waterfront, despite the fact that its usage is not necessarily at this time as a cabin, doesn't mean it won't be used as a cabin. I'd rather see something, I mean, you're right, and the cabin that's being proposed is well back, and that makes a lot of sense to me. The lot hasn't changed in size since it was purchased, and neither has the cottage, so the people that are in there knew what they got when they got it. I would rather see the cabin that's down on the water removed, and even look at possibly expanding the size of the proposed cabin. No, just comments, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Member Jarvis, any other questions or comments? Okay, I did visit the site and oh, Mr. Predko, beg your pardon?
Thank you. Thank you through you, Chair. Just a quick question to Mr. Donaldson, the planner. In the zoning for 6 Mile Lake, it's noted in your report that there is 1 bunkie allowed in a lot size that is 0.3 to 1 hectare, and this property is 0.32 hectares. Can you just confirm if the property is less than 3 hectares, is there no sleeping cabin allowed?
Through the chair, that is correct. If it's less than 3 hectares, no sleeping cabin is allowed. 0.3.
Okay, okay, thank you. And just as a comment, I would agree with Councillor Jarvis that they are just on that 0.3 line. It probably would be more beneficial for the application to have had a larger sleeping cabin application and remove the cabin at the waterfront. Although I suppose they could repurpose the cabin at the waterfront as a dry land boathouse. So we'll get into semantics, and I don't want to go down that road, but that's again just my observation and comments. Thank you.
Can I comment?
Yes, please respond.
The other thing too with, again, it was a cost thing, right? So if we have an existing structure, if you were essentially going to take the square footage and move it into the other one, now you're building a bigger building, and it's just it was cost as well, right? So that's all I mentioned.
No, and I can see where Member Jarvis and Member Predko, I had some of the similar concerns myself, but when you start take a step back and look at it, it does make sense to have a separate living quarters for the aesthetics of the property. Certainly wouldn't be a good idea to start blasting rock from where you are. And it doesn't look like that shoreline cabin is very movable either. All right, so if there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Moved by Member Predko, seconded by Member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A24-43 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 219 Big Rock Road to facilitate the construction of the sleeping cabin as described below. 1. An increase in the number of permitted sleeping cabins on a property that is less than 1 hectare but greater than 0.3 hectares in size for 1 sleeping cabin to 2 sleeping cabins. And 2, a total lot coverage of 9.74%, whereas section 6.3 requires a total lot coverage of 8%. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And 2, that the proposed sleeping cabin be substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And 3, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township, only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next minor variance application is A24-49 for 142 Carson Way. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As stated, the application before you this morning is A2449 and the property is 142 Carson Way. The subject property is comprised of 0.56 hectares and is accessed via a registered easement across the property to the south from Carson Way. The property has a frontage on Little Go Home Bay of 54 meters with a great deal of vegetation retained along the shoreline. The shore road allowance in front of the subject property was purchased and is now included in the lot area. A minor variance application was received by the township on October the 11th, 2024 as a result of a pre-application consultation report prepared by myself dated September 5th, 2024. At the present time, there is a single detached dwelling and boathouse that were constructed in 1972 and a detached garage that was constructed in 1982. The owner has confirmed that there is also a sleeping cabin constructed in 2015, a gazebo constructed in 1997, which will be part of the demolition, as well as a shed constructed in 1982. In order to accommodate the proposed dwelling with an attached garage, screen porch, and deck, the existing one-story frame cottage and detached garage are to be demolished, as well as the gazebo. The existing dwelling has a GFA of 169.08 square meters, with the proposed dwelling and attached garage to be 321.81 square meters, which requires a minor variance for an increase in the percentage permitted. The new structure is to be located in the majority of the footprint of the existing dwelling, which is considered legal non-compliant. The existing dwelling gross floor area, as stated, is 169.08 square meters, whereas the new dwelling proposed is to be 321.8 square meters, 81 square meters. As the GFA is only permitted to increase a maximum of 40%, this means that the dwelling can only be enlarged by 67.63 square meters. The proposed new dwelling will increase the existing GFA by 152.73 square meters, resulting in a minor variance request for an increase of 143%. Under subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act, the tests for the application are 1, meeting the general intent and purpose of the official plans, meeting the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, being minor, and being desirable for the appropriate use or development of the subject lands. As the proposed development increases the GFA of the legal non-compliant building, the application is to be evaluated under section 45(2) of the Planning Act. The tests for an application for permission to expand under section 45(2)R. Number 1, whether the application is desirable for appropriate development of the subject property, and whether the application will result in undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and neighborhood. During the review process, it was noted that there is currently a hot tub and sauna on the property located within the front yard, which I have circled on the photo above, and on the survey that was submitted with the application. Section 4.1.12.5 states that a sauna is not permitted in the front yard, and a hot tub may only be placed in the front yard if it is located on an attached deck. Staff are recommending a condition that the existing sauna and hot tub located in the front yard be brought into compliance prior to the issuance of a zoning certificate and building permit for the new dwelling with attached garage, screen porch, and deck. After discussions with the applicant, it was discussed that perhaps a solution that would work to the applicant's advantage, which staff could support, would be to amend the recommended condition to require the sauna and hot tub be relocated prior to occupancy or final inspection of the new dwelling. The agent for the owner of the property has had many discussions and consultations with the planning department in order to develop the property that best meets the intent of the township planning documents. It was determined through these consultations that a variance would be required in order to achieve the desired development in a way that best meets the intent of the applicable planning documents, as well as the least impact on the property overall. Staff are recommending approval of the application based on a review of the relevant policies, as the proposal is consistent with the provincial planning statement, as it's now called, 2024, meets section 45(1) and 45(2) of the Planning Act, and represents good planning.
Is that it? Thank you. Madam Secretary, is there any correspondence in this application?
Correspondence has been received from the following. 3 letters of support were received from Clay and Marilyn Young, Heather Jessamine, and Peter Shields, and Robert Birch. And 1 letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating a building permit will be required and the septic system is undersized for the proposal and upgrade will be required. 1 letter was received from Jamie Gervaux of the Ministry of Transportation, stating they have no comment regarding this application.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant or their agent present, and do they wish to address the committee on this application?
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is John DeCarley from DeCarley Contractors Limited, and I am the agent for Eric and Brenda Armstrong. I'm here today simply to make sure a certain observation is noted and frankly to answer any questions you have. The only sort of confirmation of something that I'd like to be noted is, or I'd like confirmed is, can we bring up the site plan that shows both the proposed and the existing? Yeah, that is the one, although difficult to see from here. But here's the point I'd like to make is sometimes I think the calculations as far as GFA are concerned may sort of mislead what it is that my client is trying to do here. When you review the site plan, I think it's pretty obvious that we're simply trying to replace a cottage that already exists. When the gross floor area calculation is done, the current detached garage and deck are not included. However, when looking at the new construction or the proposed construction, the gross floor area does include the garage and the deck. And so a proposed increase of 143%, although technically is accurate, I think it is to a certain degree misleading. Is that point coming through? Do I understand what I'm saying? Great. The only other point that I wanted to make is, with the exception of section 6.3, table 6.2, the proposed construction brings the current building more within the restrictions, the zoning bylaw restrictions than what is currently there today. Other than that, I defer to your guidance and decision.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing no one present or online, I will close the public portion of the application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And shall we start with Member Jarvis?
I think that's appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple questions, and yeah, apropos of your comments with regards to the garage. The garage within the proposed build is how many square meters?
Just the garage.
Just the garage, yeah.
I don't have that.
I can look that up on our plans here.
It's okay. I mean, my observation is, as noted by the proponent's representative here, is that we're incorporating the garage into the new build, whereas before it was separate. And I see them as almost the same square footage when you look at it that way. I do have one other question for our planner. if this was a new build on a blank slate and the setback was appropriate, how many square meters would be allowed on the property? Or approximately?
It's based on lot coverage, so it would be percentage of lot coverage if it was from scratch.
Yeah, I'm always curious with that type of a comparison. It'd be
I
nice to
believe
have
it's 7% in that area.
that. You might want to do the calculations.
Let me just stop sharing my screen so I can start searching for you.
All right, what's our lot size here?
Joy Defford here, just 1 second. No,
Yes.
yeah, 7% maximum lot coverage.
Which would work out to how many square meters on that lot? I guess is my question.
How big's the lot? Like I'm gonna have,
It's 0.56 hectares, right?
yeah,
How much?
Is that 392?
.392 square meters.
Yeah, and we're looking at 321, right?
Yep.
With a garage. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Are there any other questions or comments? Member Schmidt?
And just something that keeps popping up more and more, and I think we're going to see it more with the zoning compliance letters that need to come forward. I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but there's reference to the sauna being in the front yard. Based on all of the development years ago, European usage, the saunas were always situated in close proximity to the water so that you could utilize the sauna the way it's supposed to be looked at. I'm not sure who should look at that or how it possibly could be reviewed, but that particular sauna situated tucked into the trees has no negative impact to anybody. And for that to have to be moved potentially into the rear yard so that you can jump into the leaves after you have a sauna seems to defeat the purpose of why you have a sauna. So not sure who controls that, but I think that is a silly situation.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, as you know, when a situation's brought to staff's attention with my site visit, I see, and it's
Respect why you're doing
right, so it's against the bylaw requirements. I mean, we can consider that, or if someone brings it forward to consider during our zoning bylaw review, and we can
Hopefully I
discuss
just
it then.
did.
So hopefully Councillor Jarvis over there remembers that, and he will.
I think we'll put the onus on Member Jarvis to include that in the review.
And just as a comment, I'm in agreement. I talked to the owner about this, and I was going to suggest they get back to you guys and say,
Yeah.
what about, moving it after the fact?
I have no issues either way the committee decides. I'm being quite honest here. I have no.
And my observation is the hot tub. I think the hot tub could be, it's more prominent when you look at that photograph than the sauna, for argument's sake. So, and he's proposing I think he would be fine to put it up on the deck after the cottage is built. Yeah. And that would be
Okay, Mr. DiCarlo, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make it very clear. It is my client's preference not to move these items. And I appreciate Mr. Schmidt's and Mr. Jarvis's comments, not just the sauna, but also the hot tub. I mean, how it is actually used and the intent of how these things are used is to be able to access the water, not just for the sauna, but also from the hot tub as well. I appreciate the suggestion of if it is required to move these items, that we look at sort of the time condition or where in construction we would be and the condition associated. Our preference is if these items have to be moved, that we make that conditional upon final building inspection. We would rather move these items once rather than twice, and the new construction is imperative to do that.
Okay, I would just get back to our Planning Department with a question here. And in the preparation of a possible amendment to the resolution that's there, there's two options about, and it has to do with the timing of this. There's a third option, which is to leave the sauna and hot tub where they are, which we have had the opportunity to discuss on previous applications. And I would wonder, would it not be worthwhile to add that option to this recommendation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, these items have now been brought to staff's attention, which have now been brought to the committee's attention. And as a member of a municipal staff, I have to act on this, that they're brought into compliance. So I'm obligated to do something. So if the committee decides to not do anything with it, then I will have to discuss it with bylaw enforcement.
Well, just a matter of clarity here, and I think we're all on the same page here.
I totally get what you're saying. I totally
Yeah.
get. I
Okay,
totally
so-
understand it. But I'm obligated as a municipal staff member that has been brought to my attention, it should be dealt with.
Okay, but dealing with it, in terms of dealing with it, would authorizing it or approving its current location be an option?
They could if they applied for possibly a zoning bylaw amendment to keep it there because it's not permitted in the official plan either. So
Again, just a question on that. Why a zoning bylaw amendment when we have had very recently a situation where someone had a sauna in the front yard and it was part of a minor variance?
that would be something I would discuss with my colleagues and see which way we would come forward with that.
And-
But my personal opinion would be that needs to be dealt with through a zoning bylaw amendment. That is my professional opinion.
Okay, so from the wording standpoint, and just so we can move forward with this, the one option here is uses the words brought into compliance. Does that term cover what we just discussed? So that if you decided to allow it, then that
To be
would,
brought into compliance means it meets the provisions of the zoning bylaw. It meets the location, setbacks, everything. Correct.
okay, so, and if you wanted to approve it not being in compliance, would we require another change to the resolution we have in front of us?
If you wish to remove that condition in its entirety, then
That
I'm
would-
now obligated to go a different route to deal with this situation.
Okay, I'd like to get
I think
Mr.
the easiest way to address this would to just be that it be brought into compliance prior to final inspection or prior to the building permit being closed or something to that effect. It gives
So
them
that
ample
gives you-
time.
That gives you time to discuss
That's
with
correct.
the applicant.
Yep.
a
And they
resolution.
already told me yesterday that they were in agreement. If I could do that for them and stretch it a little bit longer, then yeah.
Okay, are we all good? Mr. Hazelton? Okay, we'll begin with member Hazelton, followed by member Rivet, and followed by member Matthews.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of clarify the process that I think our planner was getting at here, and that is that if the requirement is to move these things after the build prior to final inspection, and we are going through a OP and zoning bylaw review, the likelihood is that these things may actually change before they have to move it. So my question to our planner would be, if our policies change before that trigger point of that final inspection, and there is no longer a need to move them, what actions does the applicant need to take?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to member Hazelton, I have no issues with that whatsoever. I mean, if things do change, they don't have to move it. We just basically it's considered complete.
Okay.
That condition would be complete.
Okay, so time may be on our side on this one.
That's correct.
Okay,
Okay, thank you very much.
and Ms. Rivet, you had a comment?
Yes, I mean, just one comment was there, the comment was there could be a condition, I just want to find the language. A condition is being recommended that the sauna and hot tub be brought into compliance where is that condition in the recommendation? Is this the only place where it's mentioned or is it elsewhere? Right?
No, it's a full recommendation. Scroll up. At the very top of it.
Okay, so it
Yeah.
says there, okay, just
right
the
above.
area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the original.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, very
Thank you.
good. Member Predko.
Thank you, Chair. And my comments were really very similar to Member Hazelton's. I don't think I need any further clarification. It was really around what happens if the zoning changes by the time the occupancy permit is being sought. So thank you. That's all.
Member Matthews, you had a question?
Well, I did, but everyone else has answered them but now, so.
Okay. And I see a hand up from Eric Armstrong. Did you have a question? And your video is not on, so we can't see you, Mr. Armstrong.
Can you hear me now?
We can just barely hear you.
Is it possible that we have the amendment that we're talking about relative to the timing, that wording be said publicly right now so we know what it's going to be and everybody's on the same page? I like the closing of the building permit. It gives me time in hopefully spring or summer weather to move these into compliance if that's what I have to do, as opposed to the winter time, which is when I would expect the occupancy to occur.
Yes, as a matter of fact, the planner has provided us with wording for that option, and we will read that as part of the resolution.
Deb, is that the wording that you proposed yesterday?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm recommending that condition be, excuse me, amended, that they be brought into compliance prior to final inspection, which is the closing of the file.
Perfect. Thank you.
Very good.
I had just one further question.
Yes, Mr. DiCarlo, go ahead.
Is there a scenario here where the minor variance application and ultimately a building permit application be treated mutually exclusive from this issue with the hot tub and sauna? Meaning, I recognize the committee's comments about number one, what the intended use is. Number two, that the bylaw may change. I recognize the planning department's position in all this as well, that, you know, it's bylaw that they need to take action with these type of scenarios. My point here is perhaps we let the planning department pursue this how they see fit, but that be treated mutually exclusive from the minor variance application and the building permit application. Yes, I recognize
we get your point, and I know where you're going.
I recognize I'm taking our handcuffs off. I understand
but no,
that.
That's what the planner's already done. She's put those words. Yeah.
Sure. Through you, if we did it separately like that, I would report that right now to by law enforcement. They would issue an order. An order to comply would be issued also through the building department, and it would have to be done with an even quicker time frame.
Yeah.
Like 30 days?
30, usually 20 or 30 days.
No.
Yeah. Okay, point noted.
I think we're.
You can't see me go on late.
Okay, I think we're all on the same page here. So if there are no further questions or comments, I will read the application, read the resolution rather. It is moved by Member Schmidt, seconded by Member Hazelton. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community Adjustment approves minor variance application A24-49 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 142 Carson Way to permit the demolition of the existing legal non-complying dwelling, deck, gazebo, and detached garage and construct a new a detached dwelling with an attached garage, screen porch, and deck, which will have a greater gross floor area than the existing one-story frame cottage as follows. Maximum increase in GFA required is 40, proposed is 143%. Maximum yard projection of a deck of 4 meters, whereas proposed is 8.91 meters. And the minimum front yard setback required is 20 meters, and the proposed is 14.81 meters. Subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. 2, that the proposed dwelling with attached garage, screen porch, and deck be substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And 3, that the owner prepares an erosion and sediment control plan satisfactory to the township, and that the plan is executed throughout the duration of the construction of proposed development subject to minor variance application A24-49. And 4, that an Ontario land surveyor, professional engineer, or certified engineering technologist verify by pinning the foundation wall of proposed dwelling and deck and verifying in writing or by way of survey or real property report prior to the pouring of the footing, and if no footing, the foundation, that the new dwelling is no closer than 14.81 meters from the front lot line, and the deck is no closer than 11.09 to the high water mark. And 5, that the existing sauna and hot tub located in the front yard be brought into compliance prior to final inspection for the new dwelling with attached garage, screen porch, and deck. And 6, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you, councillors.
Our next minor variance application is A24-50 for 2 Island 2660 Georgian Bay. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is an island property in Georgian Bay comprised of 2.62 hectares. Oops, sorry, I just skipped a slide. There we go. The subject property is an island property in Georgian Bay comprised of 2.62 hectares with approximately 1.4 hectares above the 177.4 contour, according to the survey submitted with the application. The island is a granite rock island with, oh, I did it again. I don't know what's happening here. I apologize. There we go. I apologize for that. The island is a granite rock island with sporadic vegetation throughout and is made up of one large island, one smaller island to the south, and a few sporadic islands to the east and west. The legal description of the property is quite unique, is that of Island 103, 103A, 103B, 103I, and 103K in Georgian Bay, and is within the Cognisheen Coastal Waterfront Community. A minor variance application was received by the township on October the 11th, 2024, as a result of a pre-application consultation dated September 24th, 2024. At the present time, there is an existing 209 square meter single detached dwelling constructed in 1985 on the property, as well as an existing cabin constructed in 1990 comprised of 21.93 square meters. The survey submitted with the minor variance application shows a shed close to the shoreline, and it is assumed that this is the cabin that MPAC has noted. The owners are proposing, in addition to the existing dwelling, a sleeping cabin on the northerly part of the island, as well as a new septic system to accommodate the enlarged dwelling and sleeping cabin. As the owner is proposing to locate the sleeping cabin closer to the high water mark than permitted, an increase in the eave projection, an increase in the maximum width of a dwelling, as well as the proposed septic system being closer than required to the high water mark, a minor variance is required. The subject property is designated waterfront and located within the Cognasheen Coastal Waterfront Community as identified by Schedule G to the Township of Georgian Bay Official Plan. Section F510 outlines policies specific to the Cognasheen Waterfront Community. Water-oriented recreational uses, including single detached dwellings, are permitted uses within this designation. The policy also sets standards for the gross floor area, width, and height of the dwellings, as well as lot coverage. The proposed addition to the existing dwelling conforms to these policies. The proposed addition will be designed to incorporate the style and built form of the dwelling, thereby maintaining the general character of the residential island property. The proposed addition will respect the tree line and the view from the canoe. The proposed addition is to be located on the north side of the existing cottage, and the view from the water will not be affected. The location of the proposed sleeping cabin was determined in order to attempt to minimize the visual impact of the cabin on neighboring properties from the main dwelling as well as the channel. Existing vegetation will screen the cabin, with the topography being significantly lower than other areas on the island. As you can see in the pictures, this lowered area, which I'm just doing with my cursor there, that's where the sleeping cabin is to be located. And as you can see, is surrounded by trees. As well, this open area here is the location of the proposed septic bed. The location of the proposed cabin was determined in order to retain a large white pine tree, which is right here, that will aid in visually hiding the structure, as well as the setback is actually to an internal bay that is not traveled. If the travel channel were considered, the minimum 20-meter setback would be met. The preferred construction of the sleeping cabin is to incorporate a flat or low-sloped roof, which requires a variance to have the side and rear overhangs come closer to the front overhang, which would enhance the design and allow for greater protection of the structure. Section 4.26 of the zoning bylaw stipulates the setback requirements and minimum opening elevations for a proposed septic system on properties abutting Georgian Bay as well as other inland lakes. The owner has provided a sewage system design prepared by R.J. Burnside and Associates Limited. Based on the size and shape of the island, there is very limited area of the site that meets the 30-meter setback from the high water mark, and this area is located on the higher rocky area to the northwest of the existing cottage. Under subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act, the test for the minor variance must be looked at in this particular case. The variances being requested have been carefully considered by the applicant and have been justified in the proposal provided. The location of the proposed septic system is supported by an opinion by a professional engineer, and the location of the proposed sleeping cabin is to ensure the structure is screened by existing vegetation. In staff's opinion, the proposed development will be in conformity with other developed properties in the area. The owner of the property has had many discussions and consultations with the planning department in order to develop the property that best meets the intent of the township's planning documents. It was determined through these consultations that a variance would be required in order to achieve the desired development in a way that best meets the intent of the Cognasheen Coastal Waterfront Community Guidelines. Staff are making a request to consider a minor change to the recommended condition number 5 by removing the 3-year time frame to obtain a zoning certificate and building permit, as the owner does not anticipate building the sleeping cabin and the addition to the dwelling at the same time. Staff are recommending approval of the application based on a review of the relevant policies, as the proposal is consistent with the PPS, meets section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and represents good planning.
Okay, thank you. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
3 letters of support were received from Frank Headley, Karen Weaver, Doug Good, and John and Laura Hughes. 1 letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating that building permits will be required for all proposals. The proposal will require an OLS to confirm all setbacks prior to footing inspection for buildings, and that setbacks and elevations for the septic system prior to grades inspections.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant or their agent present or online?
Their agent is online.
Okay, is there anything that you wish to add to the planner's comments?
As the owner. Yeah.
Okay, I don't see.
Yes, I,
Here we are, okay.
Neil Davis, I am online. It just sort of invited me in. Um, I'm the owner of the property and your staff have given an excellent sort of summary of the application. This is one of those circumstances where, and maybe I could give just quickly background. When my parents built this cottage in 84 to 86, they did it deliberately to leave 5 kids behind. And so they only built 2 bedrooms in this cottage, and their needs are not our needs as we go forward. And so the application is really to anticipate the needs of our growing family. That's why we are making application for both cabin and addition at the same time, unlikely to build both concurrently, but just as needs arise. If I could speak to the variances, specifically the addition to the cottage is in a location that is least impactful to least visual impact, and the right place, quite frankly, given where the cottage is sited. There's tree cover and a prominent higher rock outcropping around the addition. The cabin, which is only going to be sited 6.1 meters, that's to an internal bay. It's a non-traveled part of the bay. You could not, especially this year, recently, get a boat in there. It is, and we own the islands around this bay. The channel itself is to the east, and the 20 meters would be met to that. If we move the cabin, which you could, to meet 20 meters, it would be more visible. It would not meet the intent of the bylaw. It would go up higher. It would not have the screening. And so this is a location, and you can see from the one picture, the floor of the cabin will be below the high point of the rock. Sort of an interesting way to design it into the rock. And so we think it's the right location. For the septic, we had Burnside do the report because we wanted to be comfortable that we were not impairing water quality. It should be noted that 21.7 meters, the effluent will never flow that direction. That's the higher point of rock in the picture of where the septic would go. That all open rock area is going to remain. The system will be where the vegetation is. And if we push the system where the vegetation is, it cannot flow to the 21.7 meter side. It will flow to the west and south, all through where the native mantle exists. And the conclusion of the engineers was it, in fact, is a better solution than if you move to the 30 meters on bare rock. So, and as for the visual with the cabin, it just seems to make sense. It's a very open location for both the addition and the cabin, in the sense of you got 50 miles of open water across from you. To have a little more overhang around, I think it'll look better, but it also provides a little bit of protection, quite frankly, for the cabin.
Okay.
So those are my remarks. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Well, I will say this. It says there's a cab. MPAC has the building that you will see in the pictures as a cabin. It's not. It's an equipment tool shed, storage shed. Has been that way. It's not a cabin. There's no washroom in proximity to it. It's not used that way. So I will speak to MPAC about why they have it designated as such.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this application? Seeing none, I will close the public session of this committee and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just comment that I'm quite familiar with this island. had the opportunity to tour Mr. and Mrs. Davis. The proposed cabin seems to make a lot of sense. It's view from the canoe, you won't see it at all. I think as Mr. Davis alluded to, he could move it up on top of a bald rock, but you're going to see that from Golden Bay, so it's not very desirable. The other comment, and maybe Debbie, about that shot that showed where the septic is, it's not going to be on that rock as it sort of looks. It will be to the left of that, which is heavy vegetation, and unless water flow uphill, it's not going to make it to Georgian Bay. Yeah, see down on the bottom right corner there, that rock is not septic is going to be. Septic will be into the left in the heavy vegetation. I just want to make that perfectly clear to everybody. It's a natural spot for it, so I would be in support of this application.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? And I don't see. Okay. Member Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, just a question to our planner, Ms. McCabe, or Director Whitlip. In this application, the septic doesn't meet the 30-meter setback, but in the report, we have quite a lengthy description from the applicant's agent on the septic system and mitigating controls that they believe will help to make the system as efficient or as effective at 21 meters as it would at 30 meters. Did you have any comments or opinions about the mitigations? And if they are this effective, is this something that could be considered in other applications in the future to help where the setbacks cannot meet the 30-meter mark?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Predko. This engineering that was prepared on behalf of the applicant was initiated by the applicant. We did not ask them to do this. They went ahead and did this in order to support their request, which I think was an excellent idea in order to support this reduction in a setback and that it can work. However, as planners, we know very little about the operations of a septic system. And I did have Kaylee, our chief building official, quickly look at the report, and she said that she sees no issues with it whatsoever. And I think the applicant went above and beyond to make sure that this system does work where he's proposing to put it.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess just the kind of my follow-up comment would be then it would be nice in the future if we can kind of remember this. So and I know we're not engineers or you're not engineers, but if some of the more less technical remediations that are mentioned by the engineer could be incorporated when we have these situations, it would be, I think, reassuring for us. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments for the applicant or comments from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Matthews and seconded by Member Rivet. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A24-50 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 2 Island 2660 to permit an addition to the existing legal non-complying dwelling, a sleeping cabin with a reduced front yard setback, and a new sewage treatment system with a reduced high water mark setback as follows. Minimum front yard setback to the sleeping cabin, 20 meters required, 6.10 proposed. Maximum eave projection for 3 walls of the sleeping cabin required is 0.6 meters, proposed is 1 meter. Minimum high water mark setback for sewage treatment system required is 30 meters, proposed is 21.7 meters. And maximum width of new dwelling required is 25 meters and proposed is 31 meters. Subject to the following conditions: that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And two, that the proposed addition to the existing dwelling, the proposed sleeping cabin and septic system be substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And three, that the owner prepares an erosion and sediment control plan satisfactory to the township, and that the plan is executed throughout the duration of the construction of the proposed development, subject to minor variance application A24-50. And four, that an Ontario land surveyor, professional engineer, or certified engineering technologist verify by pinning the foundation wall of the proposed sleeping cabin and septic system and verifying in writing or by way of survey or real property report prior to the pouring of the footing, and if no footing, the foundation, that the new sleeping cabin is no closer than 6.1 meters from the front lot line, and the septic system is no closer than 21.7 meters to the high water mark. And five, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained. And again, just a question for planning, we were saying 3 years here, the app.
3 years, Chair. I recommend that we don't. Mr. Davis, I think.
Okay.
I don't foresee any issues.
Okay. So, Madam Secretary, can we just eliminate them? All right, we won't discuss number 5. Okay. All right, having done that, I would ask that all those in favor of approval of this application, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, the motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you very much.
Our next minor variance application is A24-48. Sorry, did you have a comment? Please don't speak to Mr. Matthews, he's concentrating. Our next application is minor variance application A24-48 for 310 Birch Acres Drive. To the planner, please.
Thank you, and through the chair. The subject property has an area of approximately 2,045.3 square meters and a frontage of 32.78 meters onto South Bay. A one-story detached dwelling having an attached deck, 3 accessory buildings, and 2 docks occupy the property. The lands are grass covered with pockets of exposed granite rock in the front yard, a handful of mature trees, and a cedar hedge that lines the property boundaries. The lands are designated waterfront within the South Bay Special Policy Area of Honey Harbor and are zoned shoreline residential type 1. The South Bay wetland is located on the south side of Birch Acres Drive. The purpose and effect of the application is to seek relief from the zoning bylaw to facilitate the construction of a 2-story addition to the side and rear of the legally existing detached dwelling. The addition has a footprint of 61.6 square meters and a gross floor area of 117.9 square meters. The main floor of the addition will be used as a garage and an entryway, whereas the second floor of the addition will contain a storage room, bedroom, and bathroom. The addition will increase the lot coverage to 11.3%, whereas 7% is permitted and 8.28% currently exists. The gross floor area will increase by 117.9 square meters, whereas an increase of 85.33 square meters is permitted. And the height will increase to 6.57 meters, whereas 6 meters is permitted. As these 3 variances are for an expansion to a legal non-conforming use, the consideration is to be based upon both desirability for the development of the property in question and the impact on the surrounding area. This addition is also creating a new issue of non-compliance, being an accessory building having a setback of 4 meters from another building, whereas 5 meters is required. This variance is subject to the 4 tests under subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act. The proposed addition is desirable and appropriate for the development of the property, and the application will not result in undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and the waterfront area for the following reasons. The minimum side and rear yard setbacks are being exceeded. The expansion is proposed to the side and rear yards, being set back approximately 35 meters from the high water mark. The addition is under the maximum permitted building height in the SR1 zone, being 8 meters. Removal of vegetation is limited to the building footprint. The residents will have an attached garage to store motor vehicles and household equipment in a secure building on their property. And cedar hedges and mature vegetation along the property boundaries will screen the expansion from view by neighboring properties, lake, and road users. In the shoreline residential and shoreline residential island zones, accessory buildings are required to have a minimum setback of 5 meters from all other buildings. However, in all other residential zones, the minimum separation between buildings is 2 meters. In addition to ensuring that there's sufficient space between buildings for maintenance and access, the 5-meter separation is meant to prevent building clustering, which typically has a greater and more prominent visual impact. The commonality amongst waterfront communities is that they want to minimize the visual impact of development on the water body. The larger minimum separation requirement also limits the quantity of footprint of accessory buildings on a lot that a lot can accommodate. The shed will be 4 meters from the corner of the addition and will remain out of sight from lake users. The 4-meter separation will allow access to the side yard and space for maintenance. The accessory building in question has also been located in this location for more than 10 years and was constructed in compliance with the applicable zoning bylaw at the time. For the committee to deny the following variances applied for under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, any undue adverse impacts of the proposed expansion must be demonstrated by objective evidence and must be sufficient to override the property owner's right to reasonable flexibility, evolution, and expansion. The Committee of Adjustment can either approve or deny the variance being applied for under section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and the committee can also defer the application to a later date if the additional information is required to come to a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
One letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating building permits will be required and septic system will be reviewed to ensure sizing is large enough. The hydro line is required to be relocated prior to the permit being issued. And one letter was received from the Severn Sound Environmental Association stating they do not have any natural heritage comments.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant or their agent present, and do they wish to address the committee on this application?
Hello, Victoria Hoffman from Flow Drawings, 3 Violet Drive. Andrew, I'm going to ask you to pull up that presentation again. There's a few things that I just want to highlight to you that, and if the survey, I don't even know if I saw the survey. You guys would have the reports in front of you too, though, right?
No.
Oh, there's a clip of it. Number 3, I think. Okay. If you could. So when we first started this project, I met, sorry, and Nick Crosby, the property owner, is also sitting behind me. I met with Nick, and this cottage was it's not one of the older original dwellings. I think it was built in 2012, 2002. But this, and then, right. So, and then the information from that permit led us to believe that the existing cottage was conformant. It met the 20-meter setback. If you can pull up the survey, I apologize. I know when Shania did the presentation, but. Okay, so this is what I wrote. So if you follow, the shoreline, see how that 177.4 contour and how it comes towards the deck towards the west, and see how it scoops way up at the property line there? So we were working for an extended amount of time along the assumption that the existing structure was conforming. the benefit to getting these surveys, the updated surveys, although it costs several thousands of dollars, is that we realize these things. So then obviously that's how it went from just being the lot coverage and the shed to being the 411 issues as well. If we were to look at it just from the SR1 zone, it would have been compliant. The other issue that wasn't really highlighted in the presentation is that from the side profile, and I don't know if you have the drawings as well. I apologize. It's just a little bit of a unique one. And there was some thought kind of came into it in terms of the height because we stepped. So what in the next page probably? Yeah, so this is the side and the side that the addition is behind the boathouse. It's also the much more treed side of the property. And you can kind of see how what our goal was. We're working with 212 slopes and it's just 8-foot standard size walls, all that. But what we're trying to do is work off the existing roof ridge and then just kind of bring it in. So our building height is coming from the back taller roof. And I just thought that was also worth highlighting again, because I'm always trying to kind of, push what if the development's too tall, pushing it to the rear, I guess, which is similar to and then yeah, the shed, it was just, we were trying to keep it if possible type deal, and that would be the goal. And yeah.
That's great. Was there anything else, Mr. Crosby, you wanted to add to what's been said so far? Okay, no. That's great. It's a really interesting design. How you managed to get enough living space out of that, especially that area that's over top of the garage. All right. Do we have any member of the public that wishes to address this application? Seeing no one online or present, I will close the public session part of the session and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And we will begin with. Do you have any questions, Madam Secretary? Okay. There is a comment from Member Matthews.
You were looking perplexed that nobody was responding to you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for stepping in.
At looking at it, Victoria, it doesn't look like the addition is as big as what you're asking for, right? So does the garage count as part of that GFA? Okay, because the structure itself isn't huge, but
And that
when
was
you look at
also
it,
from a lot coverage perspective too, why we started incorporating the second story, right? And then trying to tier the
so
roof lines.
GFA,
Doesn't help with GFA, but it helps with the lot coverage. So.
right. Thank you for that.
Good, thank you. All right, if there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Jarvis, seconded by Member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A24-48. One, that a maximum lot coverage of 11.3%, whereas column 2 of table 6.3, section 4.11 permits a coverage of 7%. An increase in the existing gross floor area of 96.71%, whereas section 411E permits a maximum expansion of 70%. An increased height of 2.14 meters to a maximum height of 6.57 meters, whereas section 411E permits an increase of 2 meters to a maximum height of 6 meters. And 4, an accessory building setback of 4 meters from a building, whereas section 4.1.8 requires an accessory building to be set back a minimum of 5 meters from all other buildings. And subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And 2, that the proposed addition is substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And 3, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township, only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved. I'd like to thank everyone for their participation in today's meeting. I have one final resolution, and it's moved by Member Predko, seconded by Member Rivet. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 11:33 a.m. until December 13, 2024 at 10 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the meeting is adjourned.